Captain Hyun-woo Park stood on the bridge of the New Seoul watching the massive space station grow larger through the viewport. 3 years of waiting had led to this moment. The Galactic Council station orbited Proxima Centauri like a metal moon covered in lights that blinked in patterns he could not understand. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved around it like insects around a bright lamp. "Sir, we are receiving docking instructions from station control," said the communications officer. Her voice carried excitement that she tried to hide, but Hyun-woo could hear it anyway. This was the day humanity would become full members of the Galactic Confederation. "Acknowledge and follow their guidance," Hyun-woo replied. He turned to look at the 2 other people on the bridge who mattered most today. Dr. Sojin Kim stood near the science station, studying her tablet, while Ambassador Jaemin Lee paced near the command chair. Both looked nervous in different ways. Sojin had spent months learning everything she could about the alien species they would meet today. She knew their languages, their customs, and their histories better than most humans knew, their own neighbors. But knowing facts from books was different from meeting beings from other worlds face to face. Jaemin had been preparing for this day since he was chosen as Earth's ambassador 2 years ago. He had practiced his speeches in 17 different languages and memorized the names of every important member of the Galactic Council. Still, his hands shook slightly as he reviewed his notes one more time. "How are you feeling, Ambassador?" Hyun-woo asked as the New Seoul moved closer to the docking bay. "Like a student about to take the most important test of his life," Jaemin answered with a nervous smile. 3 years ago, we were alone in the universe. Today, we join a community of thousands of species and billions of worlds. It seems impossible." Sojin looked up from her tablet. "The preliminary meetings went well. The council members we met seemed genuinely interested in human culture and technology. I think they want us to succeed." The docking procedure took 20 minutes. The station's artificial gravity was different from Earth normal and made everyone feel slightly heavier. The air smelled of ozone and something sweet that Sojin could not identify. Security scans were polite but thorough. 3 different alien species checked their credentials and equipment before allowing them into the main station. The corridors were huge to accommodate species of all sizes. Hyun-woo saw beings that looked like walking crystals moving beside others that appeared to be made of liquid metal. Some aliens floated in environmental suits filled with gas while others wore no protection at all, despite breathing the same air as humans. "Magnificent," Sojin whispered as they walked through the central plaza. A dome overhead showed the stars, and moving ships while below them, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds conducted business, traded goods, and shared knowledge. Their guide was a tall, blue-skinned humanoid named Veltar, who spoke perfect English. "Your species has caused quite a stir among the younger council members," he told them as they rode a transport tube toward the council chambers. "Your rapid technological development and your behavior during the Kepler incident have impressed many. The Kepler incident was why humanity had been invited to join the Confederation in the first place, when pirates attacked a Zephyrian colony ship near human space. Earth's small fleet had responded immediately. They had saved 3,000 alien civilians without asking for anything in return. Most species would have demanded payment or territorial concessions. Humans simply helped because it was the right thing to do. The council chambers were even more impressive than the plaza. The circular room could hold representatives from 500 species. The walls displayed star charts and historical documents, while the center contained a raised platform where speakers addressed the assembly. Today, only about 50 council members were present for what should have been a simple ceremony. Councillor Thren of the Valari took his place at the speaker's platform. The Valari were the oldest known species in the galaxy and had helped found the Confederation 8,000 years ago. Thren looked ancient even by Valari standards, with pale gray skin and eyes that seemed to hold the weight of centuries. "We gather today to welcome humanity as full members of our Confederation," Thren began. His voice was translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "However, before we can complete this process, there is one final requirement." Jaemin shifted uncomfortably. No one had mentioned additional requirements during the preliminary meetings. "All species joining our Confederation must agree to abide by certain universal laws that maintain peace and stability across the galaxy," Thren continued. Most of these laws your species already follows. However, there is one law that requires special attention. A holographic display appeared above the platform showing legal text in multiple languages. The English version was simple enough that everyone could understand it. Universal Law 847 states that no sentient species may engage in deliberate self-endangerment for the preservation of non-allied beings. Thren read aloud. This law exists to prevent unnecessary loss of life and to maintain stable relationships between member species. So Jin felt her stomach drop as she realized what this meant. Jaemin's face went pale. Even Hyun-woo, who had faced combat without flinching, looked shaken. "Counselor Thren," Jaemin said when recognized to speak. "Could you clarify what this law means in practical terms?" "Certainly, Ambassador Lee. This law prevents member species from risking their lives to save non-allied beings without proper authorization from the Council. For example, the Kepler incident that brought you to our attention would be illegal under this law. Your ships endangered themselves and their crews to save Zephyrian civilians without Council approval." The chamber fell silent. Several alien representatives watched the human delegation with interest while others seemed to already know what was coming. But Counselor Sojin said, stepping forward, "Helping others in danger is a fundamental part of human nature. We could not simply watch beings die when we had the power to save them. That is precisely why this law exists, Dr. Kim." Thren replied, "Your species has shown a disturbing tendency to risk everything for the welfare of strangers. While admirable, this behavior is extremely dangerous and could destabilize the careful balance we have maintained for millennia." Hyun-woo found his voice. "Are you saying that to join the Confederation we must promise never to help others without permission?" "That is correct, Captain Park. Member species may only engage in rescue operations or defensive actions on behalf of non-allied beings with explicit Council authorization. Unauthorized self-endangerment is considered a threat to galactic stability." The three humans exchanged glances. Each could see the same thought in the other's eyes. This was not what they had expected. They had come here believing that humanity's willingness to help others was seen as a virtue. Instead, they were being told it was a dangerous flaw that needed to be controlled. "Counselor Thren," Jaemin said carefully, "we need time to discuss this with our government on Earth. This law has implications we did not anticipate." "Of course, Ambassador. You have 72 hours to provide your answer. I should warn you, however, that refusal to accept this law means automatic rejection from the Confederation. There are no exceptions." As they left the Council chambers, the three humans walked in silence. The beautiful station around them no longer seemed welcoming. The diverse species they passed now looked like potential enemies rather than future allies. Back aboard the New Soul, they sat in the conference room staring at the legal documents. The law was written in clear, simple language that left no room for misinterpretation. Humanity would have to choose between joining the galactic community and remaining true to their nature. "They are asking us to stop being human," Sojin said, finally. "Maybe they have good reasons," Hyun-woo replied, though he did not sound convinced. "Maybe they have seen what happens when species take too many risks." Jaemin shook his head. "I keep thinking about all the people we have saved over the years. The earthquake victims, the hostages, the soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. If we accept this law, we could never do those things again without permission from beings who might be light years away." The weight of the decision pressed down on them. Accept the law, and humanity would gain access to technologies that could solve every problem on Earth. They would have allies against external threats and trading partners across the galaxy. But they would also have to abandon the very instinct that made them human. Refuse the law and humanity would remain alone in the dark spaces between stars. They would face whatever dangers came without help from anyone, but they would still be themselves. As the New Soul turned toward Earth carrying news that would change everything, the three humans sat in silence, wondering if some prices were too high to pay even for paradise. Admiral Mi-young Choi stared at the quantum communication screen in her office on Luna Base, while Ambassador Jaemin Lee delivered his report from the Council station. The news was worse than anyone had expected. Behind her, through the reinforced Windows Earth hung in space, looking peaceful and unaware of the choice that would determine its future. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Ambassador," Mi Young said when Jaemin finished speaking. "To join the Confederation, we must promise never to help anyone without permission from the Council first." "That is exactly what they are demanding, Admiral," Jaemin replied. The transmission delay made the conversation awkward, but the meaning was clear. Universal Law 847 makes it illegal for us to act on our instincts to help others. Dr. Sojin Kim appeared on screen beside the ambassador. "Admiral, we have been researching this law since the meeting yesterday. It was created specifically because of human behavior. The Council has been watching us for 3 years, and they believe our tendency to help others is dangerous." Mi Young felt anger building in her chest. She had spent 30 years in the military protecting Earth and its colonies. The idea that helping others was somehow wrong went against everything she believed. "What does Captain Park think about this?" "Captain Park believes we should reject the law," Jaemin answered. "He says that accepting it would mean we are no longer the species that earned their respect in the first place." The communication ended, and Mi Young sat alone with her thoughts. As commander of Earth's defense forces, she understood better than most what humanity would be giving up by refusing to join the Confederation. The alien technologies could revolutionize medicine, transportation, and energy production. Their star charts showed safe routes to hundreds of new worlds. Their protection could shield Earth from threats that humans did not even know existed yet, but the price was becoming something they were not. A soft knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called. Engineer Tai Ho Yoon entered, carrying a maintenance tablet. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of eager expression that reminded Mi Young of herself at that age. "Admiral, I finished the quantum relay diagnostics. Everything is working perfectly." "Thank you, Taeho. How did the system handle the long-range transmission to the Council station?" "No problems at all, Admiral. The new Confederation communication protocols are amazing. I was monitoring the data streams and noticed something interesting, though." Mi Young looked up from her desk. "What kind of interesting?" Taeho hesitated as if unsure whether he should continue. "Well, Admiral, the protocols include automatic backup systems that store copies of all transmissions. I was checking to make sure our security was working, and I found something unusual." "Show me." Taeho activated his tablet and projected a holographic display. "The communication system has been recording and storing data about Earth for months. Not just our official messages, but background scans of our ships, our technology, even our biological patterns." Mi Young stood up quickly. "Are you telling me they have been spying on us?" "It looks that way, Admiral. But that is not the strange part. I managed to decode some of the older files and found references to something called the Altruism Protocol. The files mention 17 other species that were flagged for the same behavioral patterns as humans. What happened to those species? That is what I cannot figure out, Admiral. The files are encrypted, but I found status reports that list all 17 as either quarantined or extinct." Mi Young felt a chill run down her spine. "Extinct." "Yes, Admiral. And according to the date, some of these species were eliminated recently. The last one was only 200 years ago." The implications hit Mi Young like a physical blow. The Confederation was not just asking humans to change their behavior. They were asking humans to choose between transformation and destruction. The law was not about maintaining stability. It was about eliminating a threat. "Taeho, I need you to copy all of this data and send it to Ambassador Lee immediately. Use every security protocol we have." "Already done, Admiral. I sent the files 20 minutes ago." Mi Young smiled despite the grim news. "Good thinking. Now I need you to do something else. I want you to find out everything you can about those 17 extinct species. Use whatever resources you need." After Taeho left, Mi Young contacted the other military commanders. Within an hour, video screens around her office showed the faces of generals and admirals from every human colony and space station. Their expressions ranged from angry to worried to confused. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a problem," Mi Young began. She explained everything they had learned about Universal Law 847 and the fate of the 17 species that had shown similar altruistic behavior. General Hansol Kim from Mars Colony spoke first. Are we certain about this intelligence? Admiral, it seems impossible that the Confederation would destroy species for helping others. The data is solid, General. Our engineer intercepted communications that were never meant for human eyes. The Confederation sees our willingness to sacrifice for others as a threat to their social order. Admiral Dong-hyun Park from the asteroid mining stations leaned forward. Even if this is true, we cannot fight the entire galaxy. They have thousands of ships for every one of ours. Fighting may not be an option, Mi-young agreed. But surrendering. Our humanity is not an option either. The debate continued for hours. Some commanders argued for accepting the law and working to change it from within the Confederation. Others wanted to reject it immediately and prepare for war. A few suggested trying to negotiate a compromise. Captain Da-un Shin from the frontier. Patrol ships had been quiet during most of the discussion. Finally, she spoke up. Admiral, I have been thinking about something. What if the reason they want to eliminate altruistic species is not because we are dangerous to them, but because we are dangerous to their control? Explain, Captain. Think about it, Admiral. The Confederation is built on calculated self-interest. Every species looks out for themselves first and cooperates only when it benefits them. But what happens when you introduce a species that helps others without expecting anything in return? Mi-young nodded slowly. Other species might start questioning why they do not do the same. Exactly. Our behavior could spread. If enough species started acting like humans, the entire power structure of the Confederation could collapse. The oldest and most powerful species would lose their control. The idea made sense in a way that made Mi-young feel sick. Humanity was not being eliminated because they were evil or dangerous. They were being eliminated because their goodness was contagious. So what do we do? Asked General Kim. We make a choice, Mi-young replied. We can accept their law and hope they let us live as long as we behave, or we can reject it and face whatever comes next. And if we reject it, then we find out whether humanity's greatest strength is enough to overcome impossible odds. The honor. Communication from the council station came in during the middle of the night Earth time. Ambassador Lee appeared on screen looking exhausted, but determined. Behind him, Captain Park and Dr. Kim waited with grim expressions. Admiral, we have made our decision, Lee said without preamble. After reviewing all the evidence and considering the implications, we cannot accept Universal Law 847. Are you certain, Ambassador? There will be no going back once you deliver that message. We are certain, Admiral. Dr. Kim discovered additional information that confirms your engineer's findings. The Confederation has eliminated every species that showed significant altruistic behavior. We will not be the next. Mi-young nodded. Then we prepare for the consequences. How long do we have? Counselor Thren gave us 72 hours to respond. We plan to deliver our answer tomorrow morning station time, and then we find out what humanity is really made of, Admiral. After the communication ended, Mi-young stood at her window looking down at Earth. Somewhere on that blue and white sphere, 8 billion people were sleeping peacefully, unaware that their future had just been decided by their inability to abandon their compassion. She thought about all the times in human history when people had faced impossible choices. Sometimes they had chosen safety over principle and lived to regret it. Sometimes they had chosen principle over safety and died for it. But sometimes, rarely, they had chosen principle over safety and discovered that some things were worth more than survival. Tomorrow, Ambassador Lee would tell the Galactic Council that humanity refused to stop being human. The consequences would be swift and probably terrible. But for the first time since this crisis began, Mi-young felt proud. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it as themselves. Ambassador Jae-min Lee stood before the full Galactic Council for what might be the last time. The chamber was packed with representatives from hundreds of species, all waiting to hear humanity's answer to Universal Law 847. The air felt heavy with tension, and the usual sounds of conversation had died to whispers. Counselor Thren sat in his elevated position, looking down at the human delegation with ancient eyes that revealed nothing. Behind him, the Great Seal of the Confederation glowed with symbols representing thousands of member worlds. Soon that number might be reduced by one. Ambassador Lee. Thren said in his formal voice that carried across the chamber without amplification. Has humanity reached a decision regarding Universal Law 847? Jamin took a deep breath and stepped forward. He had practiced this speech dozens of times, but now the words felt heavier than mountains. Honorable Counselor Thren and respected members of the Galactic Council, we have indeed reached a decision. The chamber fell completely silent. Even the automated system seemed to pause as if the station itself was holding its breath. We understand the reasoning behind Universal Law 847, Jamin continued. We acknowledge that our behavior during incidents like the Kepler rescue may appear reckless or dangerous to species with different values. However, after careful consideration, we must respectfully decline to accept this law. The reaction was immediate. Some council members leaned forward in shock while others began talking urgently among themselves. A few species that Jamin could not identify made sounds that might have been approval or disgust. Thren raised one pale hand, and silence returned. Ambassador Lee, I want to ensure there is no misunderstanding. Are you stating that humanity refuses to comply with Universal Law 847? That is correct, Counselor. We cannot and will not promise to abandon what makes us human. If helping others in need without authorization is illegal under Confederation law, then we choose to remain outside the Confederation. More reaction rippled through the chamber, but Thren's expression did not change. Ambassador, you understand the consequences of this decision. Humanity will be denied all benefits of Confederation membership, including trade agreements, technological, exchange, and mutual defense treaties. We understand, Counselor. Furthermore, any human vessels found in Confederation space will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Jamin felt his heart pounding, but his voice remained steady. We understand that as well, Counselor. What happened next surprised everyone in the chamber. A delegate from the Zephyrian Assembly stood up. The Zephyrians were a proud species, with blue-green skin and large eyes that could see across multiple spectrums of light. They had been members of the Confederation for over 2,000 years. Counselor Thren, the Zephyrian delegate said, I request permission to address the Council. Permission granted, Delegate Kesara. Honorable Council members, my people owe our lives to humanity. When pirates attacked our colony ship near human space, these beings risked everything to save us. They asked for nothing in return. Now we learn that this noble act was actually illegal under our laws. Murmurs of conversation started again, but Kesara continued speaking. If helping others is a crime, then perhaps our laws need to change, not our hearts. Delegate Kesara, you are out of order, Thren said sharply. The law is clear and has served the galaxy well for thousands of years. But other delegates were standing now. A representative from the Nethys Assembly rose from her water-filled chamber. Counselor Thren, the Nethys also questioned this law. We have studied human behavior and find it admirable, not dangerous. The humans saved our research station when it was hit by asteroids, called out a delegate from the Corian Federation. They lost 2 ships and 17 crew members, saving beings they had never met. How is this behavior a threat? Thren's composure finally cracked slightly. Order. I will have order in this chamber. Captain Hyunwoo Park stepped up beside Jamin. Counselor, if I may speak. You may not, Captain. This matter is concluded. With respect, Counselor, it is not concluded. You want to know why humanity cannot accept your law. The answer is simple. We have tried living according to calculated self-interest, and it nearly destroyed us. Despite Thren's protests, the chamber had grown quiet again. Even the most senior council members seemed interested in what the human captain had to say. A few hundred years ago, my species almost wiped itself out in wars fought over resources, territory, and ideology, Hyunwoo continued. We only survived by learning to put the welfare of others before our own immediate interests. That lesson is written into our DNA now. Remove it, and we become something else, something worse. Dr. Sojin Kim joined the other 2 humans at the center of the chamber. Counselor, we have studied the histories of Confederation member species. Many of you have similar stories of overcoming destructive behaviors. The difference is that you chose to overcome aggression, and we chose to overcome selfishness. Enough, Thren said, standing up from his chair. This discussion serves no purpose. Humanity has rejected the law and will face the consequences. Security escort the human delegation from the station, but as security forces moved toward the humans, something unexpected happened. Delegate Kessera stepped in front of them. These beings are under Zephyrian protection, he announced. The Nethys also extend protection, added the aquatic delegate. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species had moved to surround the human delegation. Not all of them were minor species either. The Corian Federation controlled significant territory, while the Altair Collective commanded one of the largest fleets in the galaxy. Thren looked around the chamber with growing alarm. All delegates return to your seats immediately. This is unprecedented. So is asking a species to abandon their fundamental nature, replied a new voice. Philosopher Wu Jin Nam had arrived on the station that morning as part of the human delegation's expanded team. At 93 years old, he was one of Earth's most respected thinkers, and his presence commanded attention even here. Who are you, to address this council? Thren demanded. I am someone who has spent his life studying what makes civilizations rise and fall, Wu Jin replied calmly. And I can tell you that any society that outlaws compassion is already falling, whether it knows it or not. The old philosopher moved slowly to the center of the chamber, leaning heavily on his walking stick. Honorable council members, you fear that human behavior will spread to other species. You are absolutely right to fear this, but not for the reasons you think. Explain yourself, Thren said, though he looked like he did not want to hear the answer. You have built a galaxy based on the idea that cooperation only happens when everyone benefits equally. It has given you stability for thousands of years. But it has also given you stagnation. How many problems could you solve if species helped each other without calculating the cost first? How many wars could you prevent if beings cared about strangers as much as they care about themselves? Wu Jin turned to address the entire chamber. Humanity is not offering you chaos disguised as kindness. We are offering you evolution disguised as revolution. The chamber erupted in discussion as delegates argued among themselves in dozens of languages. Some species seemed intrigued by the philosopher's words, while others appeared horrified. The careful order that had governed the Confederation for millennia was beginning to crack. Thren activated an emergency signal that brought armed security forces into the chamber. This assembly is dissolved pending further review. All non-essential personnel will evacuate immediately. But even as security forces surrounded them, the human delegation noticed something important. Nearly a third of the council delegates were making no move to leave. Instead, they were gathering in small groups, having urgent conversations with each other. As they were escorted from the chamber, Jae-min caught fragments of those conversations. Words like independence and withdrawal and new alliance drifted through the air. The Confederation's attempt to force humanity into compliance was having exactly the opposite effect they intended. Back aboard the New Soul, the human delegation watched through the viewports as ships began leaving the station. Not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of other species. Some were heading back to their home worlds to report what they had witnessed. Others were forming small fleets and setting course for unknown destinations. What happens now? Sojin asked as they prepared to depart. Now we find out whether standing up for what you believe in is worth the price you pay for it, Hyunwoo replied. Captain Da-Un-shin's voice came over the communication system from her patrol ship. New Soul, this is Frontier 6. We are picking up multiple fleet movements heading toward human space. It looks like the Confederation is mobilizing. Jaemin closed his eyes for a moment. Then it begins. Sir, the communications officer called out. We are receiving a message from the Zephyrian assembly ship. They are requesting permission to escort us back to Earth. Through the viewport, they could see the sleek Zephyrian vessel moving into formation beside them. Behind it came ships from the Nethys, the Corians, and half a dozen other species. Permission granted, Hyunwoo said with a slight smile. Tell them welcome to the revolution. As the mixed fleet turned toward Earth, the Galactic Council station fell behind them. Commander Kyung-Soo Han gripped the arms of his command chair as explosions lit up the space around his ship. The Battle of Kepler 442 had been raging for 6 hours, and the combined human-alien fleet was losing badly. Through the tactical display, he could see friendly ships disappearing one by one under the overwhelming firepower of the Confederation fleet. "Commander, we have lost contact with the Zephyrian cruiser Brightwing," reported his tactical officer. "She took a direct hit to her reactor core." "Any survivors?" Kyung-soo asked, though he already knew the answer. Ships that lost their reactor cores did not leave survivors. "Negative, sir. But before she went down, she managed to take out 2 Confederation destroyers." The Brightwing had sacrificed herself to protect a damaged human transport carrying wounded from both sides. It was exactly the kind of behavior that had gotten humanity into this war in the first place. Now their allies were doing the same thing. "Sir, we are receiving a distress call from the medical ship Mercy," his communications officer announced. "She is under attack by 3 Confederation fighters. Her shields are failing." Kyung-soo looked at the tactical display. The Mercy was 2 million kilometers away, carrying wounded humans, Zephyrians, and even some captured Confederation soldiers. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was already damaged and low on ammunition. Moving to help the medical ship would put them in range of a Confederation battle group that could destroy them easily. "Navigation set course for the Mercy maximum speed," he ordered. "Sir, that will take us directly through the enemy formation," his navigator Young-ho Kang warned. "I know, Lieutenant. Do it anyway." The Soul's Pride turned toward the medical ship and accelerated. Around them, space filled with energy beams and missile explosions as the Confederation forces tried to stop them. Kyung-soo watched his shield strength drop as they took hit after hit. Dr. Yoonji Lim's voice came over the ship's communication system from the medical bay. "Commander, we have wounded Confederation soldiers asking to help defend the ship. They say they want to repay the humans who risked their lives to save them." "Tell them their help is welcome, Doctor," Kyung-soo replied. The idea that enemy soldiers would volunteer to defend the ship that was trying to rescue their own people would have seemed impossible a year ago. Now it was becoming normal. The Soul's Pride reached the Mercy just as her shields failed completely. One of the attacking fighters was lining up for a killing shot when Young-ho did something that would be remembered across the galaxy. He rammed his ship directly into the path of the enemy weapons. The impact destroyed the Soul's Pride's forward sections and killed Young-ho instantly. But it also crippled 2 of the attacking fighters and gave the Mercy time to escape with her precious cargo of wounded from both sides. Emergency evacuation. Kyung-soo ordered as hull breaches spread throughout his ship. All hands to escape pods. As the crew abandoned ship, Dr. Lim refused to leave her patients. "I am not abandoning wounded people whether they are human or alien," she told the evacuation team. "Get everyone else off, but I am staying." 3 human medics and 2 Zephyrian nurses stayed with her. When the Soul's Pride finally broke apart 6 hours later, they were still inside treating wounded and preparing them for rescue. The evacuation pods were picked up by a mixed fleet of human and alien ships. As Kyung-soo transferred to another vessel, he received updates on the battle. The Confederation forces had achieved their tactical objectives, but at a cost that shocked their commanders. For every human ship destroyed, 2 alien vessels had joined the rebellion. Species that had been neutral were now openly supporting humanity. The Tarkin Empire had withdrawn from the Confederation entirely. Even some Volari colonies were questioning their government's policies. More importantly, the battle had been broadcast across thousands of worlds. Beings throughout the galaxy had watched humans and their allies sacrifice themselves to save enemies. They had seen Dr. Lim risk her life to treat wounded Confederation soldiers. They had witnessed Young-ho give his life to protect a medical ship. Captain Hai-In-Oh received the transmission on her ship, the New Harmony, as she led a mixed squadron on patrol near the Sirius system. Her crew included human Zephyrians, Nethys, and even a few defectors from Confederation species. They had been working together for months, and the differences between species seemed less important every day. "Captain, we are receiving multiple distress signals from the Rigel colony," her communications officer reported. "They are under attack by Confederation forces." Hayin looked at the tactical display. Rigel was defended by a small planetary militia that would not last long against a full battle fleet. But Rigel was also home to mixed families that included humans and aliens who had married across species lines. The Confederation considered such relationships illegal and had been systematically destroying colonies that allowed them. "How many ships do they have?" Hay-In asked. 12 heavy cruisers and twice that many smaller vessels, Captain. "We have 8 ships." Hay-In's crew looked at her expectantly. Everyone knew this was exactly the kind of situation that Universal Law 847 was designed to prevent. Rushing to help Rigel would risk their entire squadron to save people they had never met. "Navigation set course for Rigel," Hay-In ordered. "Communications send a message to all ships in the area. Tell them Rigel needs help." The response surprised even her. Within hours, 47 ships had joined her squadron. They came from 16 different species, including some that had never worked together before. The crews barely knew each other, but they shared a common belief that some things were worth fighting for. The Battle of Rigel lasted 3 days. The combined fleet fought with a coordination that should have been impossible given their diverse backgrounds. Human tactical doctrine blended with Zephyrian speed and Nethys defensive strategies to create something entirely new. When the Confederation forces finally retreated, they left behind a colony that was damaged but still free. More importantly, they left behind proof that beings from different worlds could work together when they shared common values instead of just common interests. Admiral Sung-Min Bei watched the reports from his flagship orbiting Earth. As overall commander of the Human Defense Forces, he had access to intelligence from across the galaxy. What he saw both encouraged and worried him. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had predicted. Dozens of species had either joined humanity openly or were providing covert support. The Confederation's carefully maintained unity was fracturing along ideological lines that had been hidden for centuries. But the Confederation still controlled the majority of the galaxy's military forces. Their response to the growing rebellion was becoming increasingly brutal. Entire colonies were being destroyed as examples to others. Neutral species were being forced to choose sides. "Admiral," his aide announced, "we are receiving a priority transmission from Counselor Thren." The main screen activated to show the ancient Valari leader. He looked older than before and his composure seemed strained. "Admiral Bei, I am authorized to offer humanity a final opportunity to end this conflict peacefully," Thren said without preamble. "Accept Universal Law 847, and the Confederation will grant your species autonomous control over a significant sector of space. You may govern as you choose within your borders." Sung-Min considered the offer carefully. It would end the war and save countless lives. Humanity would have its freedom even if it came with restrictions. "What about our allies, Counselor? What happens to the species that supported us?" "They will be dealt with according to Confederation law," Thren replied. "That is not humanity's concern. I am afraid it is our concern, Counselor. We do not abandon beings who risk their lives for us." Thren's expression hardened. "Then you choose war over peace. The consequences will be entirely your responsibility." "No, Counselor. The consequences will be shared by everyone who believes that compassion is stronger than fear." After the transmission ended, Sung-Min sat alone in his office thinking about the choice they had made. Accepting Thren's offer would have saved human lives, but it would have condemned their allies to destruction or subjugation. The war that had started with humanity's refusal to obey one law had become something much larger. It was no longer about human survival, but about what kind of galaxy future generations would inherit. Would it be one where beings helped each other without calculating the cost? Or one where compassion was regulated by bureaucrats who had forgotten what it meant to care about strangers? Through his window, Earth turned slowly in space. Somewhere on that blue world, children were playing games that involved rescuing imaginary beings from imaginary dangers. They did it instinctively without being taught because helping others was as natural to humans as breathing. Soon those children would grow up in a galaxy where that instinct was either celebrated or criminalized. The choice between those futures was being decided in battles fought millions of kilometers from Earth by beings who had never seen a human child, but understood why those games mattered. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had already changed. The galaxy would never again be a place where compassion could be outlawed without consequence. Whether humanity survived or not, their example had planted seeds that would grow in the hearts of beings across thousands of worlds. Sometimes that was enough. 2 years had passed since humanity rejected Universal Law 847, and the galaxy was no longer the same place. Admiral Sungmin Bei stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Indomitable, watching the final approach to the Galactic Council station. Behind him stretched a fleet unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from 47 different species flew in formation together. Sleek, Zephyrian cruisers moved beside bulky Nethys carriers, while human destroyers escorted Corian science vessels. The differences in their design spoke of thousands of years of separate evolution, but their crews had learned to work as one. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from 12 Confederation vessels," reported Commander Heian O from her position at the tactical station. "They want to join our fleet. Accept their surrender and assign them escort positions," Sungmin replied. "Make sure they understand they are fighting for an idea now, not just their governments." The war had changed in ways that no one had predicted. What began as punishment for humanity's refusal to obey had become a galactic civil war between two different visions of civilization. On one side stood the old Confederation with its laws that prioritized stability over compassion. On the other side stood the growing alliance of species who believed that helping others was more important than following rules. The tide had turned 6 months ago during the Battle of the Centauri Nebula. Confederation forces had surrounded a refugee convoy carrying families fleeing the war zones. Among the refugees were members of 50 different species, including many whose governments still supported the Confederation. When Admiral Bei's fleet arrived to rescue the convoy, they found themselves outnumbered 3-1. The logical choice would have been to withdraw and save their ships for more important battles. Instead, they attacked immediately, putting themselves at enormous risk to save beings they had never met. The battle was broadcast live across the galaxy. Beings on thousands of worlds watched human ships sacrifice themselves to protect alien families. They saw Zephyrian pilots ram their fighters into Confederation cruisers to create escape routes for refugee transports. They witnessed Dr. Yunji Lim evacuate wounded enemy soldiers before saving herself when her medical ship was hit. The impact was immediate and devastating to the Confederation's cause. Entire star systems declared independence overnight. Military units refused orders to attack civilian targets. Even some Valari colonies began questioning whether their ancient leaders truly represented their values anymore. "Admiral, we are being hailed by Counselor Thren," announced the communications officer. The main screen activated to show the council chamber where Thren sat alone. The once mighty assembly hall was nearly empty, with most species having either joined the rebellion or withdrawn from the Confederation entirely. "Admiral Bei," Thren said, and his voice carried the weight of centuries. "I am authorized to offer you terms for ending this conflict." "I am listening, Counselor." "The Confederation will grant full independence to all species currently in rebellion against our authority. You may form your own government and live according to your own laws. In return, you will withdraw from all Confederation territory and cease hostilities immediately." Sungmin considered the offer carefully. 2 years ago, it would have seemed like victory. Humanity and its allies would have their freedom while the Confederation kept control of the rest of the galaxy. "What about Universal Law 847, Counselor?" "The law will remain in effect for all Confederation members," Thren replied. "However, it will not apply to your alliance." "So you are asking us to accept a galaxy divided between those who are allowed to help others and those who are forbidden from doing so?" "That is correct, Admiral." Sungmin looked around his bridge at the mixed crew of humans and aliens who had learned to trust each other completely. 2 years ago, they had been strangers from different worlds. Now they were family bound together by shared beliefs rather than shared genetics. "Counselor, I have a counter-proposal. The Confederation will repeal Universal Law 847 entirely. All species will be free to help others without seeking permission first. In return, we will work together to establish new guidelines for galactic cooperation based on voluntary assistance rather than mandatory isolation." Thren's expression did not change, but something flickered in his ancient eyes. "That is impossible, Admiral. The law exists for good reasons. Without it, the galaxy would descend into chaos as species involve themselves in conflicts that do not concern them." "Counselor, With respect, the galaxy is already in chaos. Your law has not prevented war. It has simply made sure that when wars happen, only the victims suffer while everyone else stands by and watches. Captain Hayen. O stepped forward. Counselor, may I speak? You may, Captain. 2 years ago, my ship rescued a damaged Valari transport that was carrying your own civilians, including children. Under your law, that rescue was illegal because we did not have council authorization. Are you saying we should have let those children die to preserve legal technicalities? For the first time in their conversations, Thren hesitated before answering. The law is clear, Captain. Unauthorized rescue operations create precedents that can lead to larger conflicts. But those were your people, Counselor. Hayen pressed. Your children. Does following the law matter more than saving lives? The question hung in the air between them. Through the viewports of the Indomitable, the lights of the council station reflected off the hulls of ships from dozens of species, all waiting for an answer that would determine the future of galactic civilization. The law has served us well for 8,000 years, Thren said finally, but his voice lacked its usual conviction. And in 8,000 years, how many beings have died because others were afraid to help them? Sungmin asked. How many problems have gone unsolved because species were not allowed to work together without bureaucratic approval? How many friendships have never formed because the law kept potential allies apart? Young engineer Taeho Yoon, who had discovered the truth about the Confederation's surveillance, chose that moment to transmit data files to every ship in the area. The files contained records of the 17 species that had been eliminated showing altruistic behavior similar to humanity's. Counselor Taeho said over the communication system. These files show what really happens to species that refuse to obey Universal Law 847. They are not quarantined or relocated. They are destroyed completely. Is that the kind of galaxy you want to preserve? The transmission was picked up by ships throughout the system and relayed to worlds across the galaxy. Within hours, beings everywhere knew the truth about what their government had been doing to species that dared to care about others. The response was immediate. The few remaining Confederation fleets began standing down as their crews refused to continue fighting. Valari colonies that had supported the Council for millennia declared independence. Even some members of the Council itself began abandoning the station. Thren sat alone in his chamber, watching the government he had served for centuries collapse around him. What do you want from us, Admiral? He asked finally. We want you to join. As Counselor, Sungmin replied. Not as subjects or enemies, but as equals working together to build something better than what we had before. And if we refuse, then you will be alone in a galaxy that has chosen compassion over calculation. But we will not force you to change. That choice has to come from within. The conversation ended, and Thren disappeared from the screen, leaving the bridge of the Indomitable quiet, except for the soft sounds of instruments and ventilation systems. What happens now, Admiral? Asked Commander O. Now we find out whether it is possible to govern a galaxy based on voluntary cooperation instead of enforced compliance. Sungmin replied. 3 months later, Captain Hyunwoo Park stood in the same council chamber where Ambassador Lee had first rejected Universal Law 847. But the chamber looked very different now. Representatives from over 200 species filled the seats while others participated through holographic projection from their home worlds. The old Council of Elite Species had been replaced by an assembly where every civilization had an equal voice regardless of age, size, or technological development. The ancient hierarchies based on when species achieved spaceflight had given way to a system based on shared values and mutual respect. The motion before us today, announced the current Assembly President, who was a young Nethys diplomat named Kira Vel, is the formal repeal of Universal Law 847 and its replacement with the Galactic Charter of Voluntary Assistance. The debate that followed lasted for days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. Species after species stood to tell stories of times when others had helped them without authorization, and how those acts of kindness had made their worlds better places. When the vote was finally taken, it was unanimous. Universal Law 847 was officially repealed and replaced with guidelines that encouraged rather than restricted interspecies cooperation. Dr. So-Jin Kim, who had become the first director of interspecies cultural exchange, watched the celebration from the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from hundreds of worlds flying together in formations that would have been impossible under the old system.